Hey guys, this is GamerCow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game Online deck showcase. This time we are going to be looking at my Mega Gardevoir deck. So, just a very brief bit of backstory, because it's probably going to be a long one due to the length of the games and such. I basically wanted to build a fairy deck for when I inevitably got fairy challenges, because of course TCGO gives you different challenges for every type, or basically the same like 2 or 3 challenges, but you get them for every type except colourless, and inevitably you are going to have to start knocking Pokemon out and getting evolutions for the fairy type and whatnot, so that is pretty much what this deck is designed to do. Also, Gardevoir is like my favourite Pokemon, as people probably know, so when I saw Mega Gardevoir I figured it's not terrible. It really actually goes back to the original Gardevoir EX in a way, because I believe that one, I have it somewhere, that it did 10 damage for every energy that you had on board. I forget exactly how many it took. It was probably like 2 psychic and 2 colorless or something, but it was pretty dang powerful in its own right. And this one does a fair bit more than that, of course. Brilliant Arrow does 30 damage for every fairy energy you have on board. Takes free energy to use. You could use this with double colorless, but there wouldn't really be any point because you do need to have a lot of damage, a lot of fairy energy, so specifically on board. This is not like Huntail, which is just any energy at all. So the idea is to flood the field with as many fairy energies as you can, and then get Brilliant Arrow with Gardevoir here. It has a fairly fragile 210 HP, although other Megas like Manectric do follow that same total, and they are perfectly playable, so that's not really the problem. The biggest weakness with Gardevoir is that you do need a lot of energy on board. You generally need between 6 and 8 energy, and that's pretty tough to do. So let's just take a quick look at the way that we do that. Of course, the main way is going to be Xerneas. Xerneas' Geomancy is absolutely fantastic, and you usually do want to go second with this deck because of this this attack here. It's a bit surprising. You normally don't feel like, or you don't consider the fact of you'd maybe want to go second with a deck, but Xerneas provides you with energy acceleration in the form of an attack, which means you do need to go second in order to make that attack work. However, when you have a couple of basic Pokemon down, and this deck is really good at getting said basics, so you usually have 2 down, you can get 2 fairy energy on board, and if you manage to get Aromatisse out, Aromatisse's fairy transfer lets you switch the energy, specifically fairy, but in this deck every energy is a fairy energy, so you can basically just take all of your energy and shuffle them about any way you want, which is pretty great. So, in addition to the 2 Shaman here, we of course have our main line as a 2-2 Mega Gardevoir. Gardevoir EX is not bad, but also not super great. It takes all fairy, but that again doesn't matter for this deck. 100 for free is not terrible, and the no weakness thing probably does help a little bit against steel decks, but I imagine steel decks should probably be hitting you for, you know, high numbers anyway. Dialga, as an example, Muscle Banded Dialga will hit you down. It would stop Scizor from hitting you, knocking you out in 1 hit though. So it's not awful. It's probably not the way you are going to end up using stuff though. You really want to be using Xerneas until you have the Mega Gardevoir up. That's pretty much it. We do have 1 copy of Xerneas EX in here though, because even though it's not a stellar card, it is passable enough. Breakthrough is actually really good against Night March if you can manage to power this up and not die. It has some limitations nowadays because fighting Fury Belt makes it so that Breakthrough doesn't actually knock out either Joltik or Pumpkaboo, but if you can nail an active Pumpkaboo without the Fury Belt and there's a Joltik on the bench, you can take 2 prizes easily. You can also snipe the Feebas before it goes to Milotic, and works well with that too. Also, X-Blast is just a powerful basic attack to use. 140 is not quite high enough to get one-shots on a lot of things, but it does very good against non-EXs, especially if you have the one copy of Muscle Band on it to do 160 instead. Then finally we have one copy of Malamar. Malamar EX is an interesting card, say less. I have actually used this in a few games, and it's really dirty when it works. I will admit I am not a huge fan of winning games on coin tosses, but the fact if you have Aromatisse to use Fairy Transfer means that if you have a Malamar down, all of your energy can just, from the hand, can be attached to Malamar, and then the opponent just goes to sleep. You can Fairy Transfer the energy to where it's actually needed, and if you need to attack, I do have one copy of Rainbow Energy in this deck, just so that you can attach and then Fairy Transfer that away as well. And Malamar is able to do a lot of damage if you have some good luck with you. Usually you would probably have 4 or maybe 5 energy on this thing, so it's a bit of a gamble, but it has the potential to do ridiculous amounts of damage, and it does provide a different attack type in case you come across stuff like Gengar, which is pretty nice. So that's all the Pokemon of the deck. There's a fair few in here. We only really need one Aromatisse out, so a 2-2 line is fairly okay for that. And we also have some good supporter sets up with that. Most of the cards in this deck are basics, and a lot of them are EXs as well, so Bridget doesn't really work here, but Pokemon Fan Club is fantastic. If you can start with this and the Xerneas active, then you're basically able to get a Geomancy off without too many issues. So you can use this to pick up a Shaman if you do need to get more energy down, or more cards in your hand really, to try and fish for the energy. Or you can just take Spritzee and Gardevoir and go from there, or basically any sort of combination of stuff. It's pretty good. Most of the Pokemon in here do have a lot of HP, so Level Ball, I actually do... I did originally in this deck have, I think, a Level Ball and the Evo Soda, but I've since taken those out for the 2 Max Potion here. Max Potion is pretty much a staple in this type of deck, because usually you will want to be able to heal off damage, and with Fairy Transfer you can take away all the energy before you heal the Pokemon so that you don't actually lose any board position. Gardevoir might not have the highest HP of any Mega, but it does have a high enough HP to survive most attacks, and when it lives you essentially get to have an extra turn with this and force the opponent to attack you twice again. It's just a great momentum preserver. So we have a couple of copies of that. We have the usual sort of draw stuff here. We have two Birch's Observations, because I prefer this over Shauna. Admittedly, I haven't really playtested Shauna much at all, but I tend to get about... it's a bit more than 50-50 for me. I tend to be relatively lucky with this card in comparison. If I do flip Tails, I often end up flipping into Ultra Ball so I can get Shaman out and refresh my hand anyway. And when I get Heads, of course, 7 cards is fantastic, so we have that to go with. We have the one copy of Giovanni's Scheme, because I like this card a lot, but also because it can double as either a draw card if you've used up a lot of your stuff, or you can use it to do some extra damage when you are just 1 energy short of scoring a knockout. For example, if you only had 4 energy out against a Garchomp, then you could Brilliant Arrow for 140 and actually get the knockout there, which is pretty useful. So, very nice card to have around, definitely one that I like. We have one AZ, because I found AZ to be really good in most decks, because you can just AZ for the Shaman, or you can use it to pick up a Pokemon that you have heavily damaged. Say, if you've been using Malamar for attacking, then you can Fairy Transfer away from it, AZ, pick it back up, put it down again, and it's as good as new. So, nice card to have around with that. And we also have a couple of Super Rod. This deck doesn't like its energy being in the discard, and of course when you start having knockouts against you, or if you need to use as regular Xerneas' Rainbow Spear, which would knock out Regice. It's one of the main reasons to have it around is for attacking wise, is that a Muscle Banded or Giovanni Xerneas will KO Regice in one hit if it doesn't have a Fury Belt. It's going to be kind of difficult to keep the math going nowadays, but essentially you're going to have to have energy in the discard at some point, and Super Rod just lets you get that stuff back. It also, if you had to say Sycamore away an Aromatisse at the start of the game, or Mega Gardevoir, you can pick those up as well, put them back into the deck, which is why I use that over Energy Recycler. So that's a pretty nice choice. Otherwise, standard for Vespiquen, we have one switch, because if you don't start Xerneas, then there really isn't a way of getting a turn 1 Geomancy otherwise. So I'd love to fit 2 or even 3 switch in here, but I think 3 would be excessive, because you do have your stadium as Fairy Garden. I used to have 4 of these, but I replaced one with a switch so that I could try and get the turn 1 Geomancy a bit more. Usually I end up drawing into Shamans and stuff and pulling a lot of my deck out at the start, so yeah, Fairy Garden is nice, but you need a second attachment for stuff that way, so yeah. But Fairy Garden does work extremely well with Aromatisse. It gives all of your Pokemon Zero Retreat with no problem, and it really just keeps you mobile, which is one of the cooler things about this deck. Other stuff we've got, of course, the 1 copy of Lysander is fairly standard. I think most people are running 2 at the moment, but I very rarely have space for that, and usually I want to be hitting the thing which is in front of me anyway. If I am not aiming to hit the thing in front of me, then that's where Xerneas' Breakthrough comes in, so that I can try and damage stuff a bit more readily. You know, get double knockouts and stuff, if I can. We've got 2 Gardevoir Spirit Link, because we only have a 2-2 line here. I know some people might want to buff this up to like a 3-3, but I kind of wanted to have other attackers in here as well, because as nice as Gardevoir is, it's a little bit linear. You know, you can only really do one thing with it, whereas Malamar lets you put stuff to sleep, and that can really do some damage actually, because a lot of decks don't have that many switching cards. So you can force them, or you can just force them to burn them, which is nice. And then of course, like I've said, Xerneas can hit the bench as well, so a little bit more versatile than just straight damage, and that's why we only need the 2 Spirit Links. The 1 Muscle Band is mostly for the Regice matchup. This was built before BREAKpoint came out, and so I've really just modified it to have the 2 Max Potion in here, but a Muscle Banded Xerneas can hit nice numbers with that. It also works with Malamar sometimes, because you can hit the really heavy numbers. You can hit like 200 for 3 coin tosses, which sometimes helps against Muscle Banded foes, and yeah, it's just a generally good option to have around. If you weren't able to use the Spirit Link on Gardevoir, you can buff your damage with that too, so nice to have. And then the energy, it's almost all Fairy energy, because Xerneas needs basic Fairy energy to accelerate, but Malamar takes 1 Darkness energy to attack, so as I've said before, we have the Rainbow energy to facilitate that. So that is the deck. And now let's have a look at a couple of games which we have here. We have 2 games because the first one was kind of short and didn't really conclude properly. So yeah, let's take a look. Alright, so the first game we have here is against a Garchomp deck. So a lot of the ladder at the moment does seem to just be Night March and Garchomp, which is kind of annoying for this deck. This deck isn't fast enough to really threaten them most of the time. Of course, even though I win the coin toss, I do decide to go second here, because I'm thinking most of the time I'm aiming for a turn 1 Geomancy, as you can see we're most likely to get here, and that is just the most powerful way of dealing with this. So, Fighting Colors, you don't really know exactly what they're playing yet, but yeah, spoilers, it was a Garchomp deck. Garchomp decks are really problematic for me to deal with, because Garchomp itself does 160 damage for 2 energy to pretty much all of my attackers, right? It actually just outright kills Malamar because of weakness. It kills Shaman when I put it down because it doesn't have enough HP. You see, the Trainer's Mail fails here, so that's kind of unfortunate. Probably puts my opponent a bit more on the back foot here. Professor's Letter is not too bad for getting extra energy out, but is really kind of indicating this might be a setup play. But smartly is 1 energy taken out the deck for Sycamore, because Garchomp's Turbo Assault would actually let the energy come back up. And you see, because of that Sycamore, this is actually a pretty solid start. the 2 Gibble down, there's the Ultra Ball coming out here, so this is going to get Gabite, if I remember rightly. Which, no, actually Shaman first, because they don't have a Shaman in hand. There was one game I played where Gabite was gotten from Ultra Ball fairly early on. I don't actually remember if it's this game or not, now that I think about it. But, yeah, there's some fairly powerful options coming out here. It's a pretty good setup. You can see the catch is that a Red Candy Garchomp had to get discarded there. Also, Muscle Band, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just attach that to Shaman if you're going to have to discard anyway. Not really sure what was up with that. So looking at the deck here, you can see we do have our Aromatisse in play, we do have the Spritzy. There is an extra Shaman in the deck, which is pretty good, so we are able to get all of that stuff if we need to. Just taking a brief look through the rest of the deck to see about stuff such as more Ultra Balls and whatnot. Just checking the status on that stuff. Nothing too dangerous there. Of course, we discarded Giovanni's because of the Vespiquen in hand. We can easily just pull it back if we need to. And that was a pretty good Shaman right there, I would say. We are still missing the energy. That's the one big problem here. And that, I mean, we have ways of solving that. And I think the way that I'm going to look at it here is just to Ultra Ball away the Birch and the Trainer's Mail. I didn't want to use Trainer's Mail in case it failed because I don't have Professor's Letter in this deck, so I just wanted to get my Shaman and focus entirely on that. Drawing 4 is pretty powerful. With Shaman, you do need to get as many as you can. There's a Rainbow Energy. It's not the greatest of energy here, I will admit, but it is good enough. There's not really any way that a Garchomp deck in this current board state is actually going to do 120 next turn to a non-EX. I guess there could be some shenanigans of Max Elixir or something, but it's not going to work out really too much that way. Anyway, I only take one Pokemon with the Pokemon Fan Club there because I honestly don't need to take more. I don't have an Ultra Ball or any need to discard stuff. I have all the stuff in my hand that I want, so essentially I didn't need 2 Pokemon there. I didn't have space to put 2 Pokemon down, and there just wasn't a point. You know, sometimes you don't need to take all of the Pokemon you have, or you can possibly have. So this is actually a really strong position here. If I don't get judged, which I don't because Karina comes down, I have the capabilities of getting Aromatisse into play, Mega Gardevoir because of the Spirit Link, Fairy Garden gives me 0 retreat, and then I can Vespiquen for a supporter too. Really, really good play. However, we do see the Gabite was put in hand, there's a Garchomp coming down with Red Candy, that's a pretty powerful setup here, and a Floatstone coming down and a Shaman. I don't know if I agree with that, in all honesty, because that Shaman has an energy attached. I would have thought that you would have wanted that energy in the discard, just so that you could use Turbo Assault and bring it back up. What do I know? I'm just a guy that plays game. And you can see this Garchomp has the capability of doing a ton of damage now. It has strong energy on it, it has enough to do Bite Off, so that's already hitting 180. Fighting Stadium Muscle Band could come down next turn and that would threaten the KO on my Gardevoir. So even though this is going to leave me in a really top decky sort of position, I looked at the board state and I was thinking, he doesn't really have anything to deal with me here. If I knock out this Garchomp, there really isn't very much that's going to stand in my way. So this is where the versatility of Giovanni's comes in, because I'm going to do 20 extra damage this turn, and I have 4 energy in play. So with Aromatisse I can Fairy Transfer, take the 3rd energy onto Gardevoir so it can attack, and now I'm doing 120 plus 20, 140 damage, knocking out the fragile Garchomp before it really gets to do too much damage. Now, even though this is putting me in a top deck position, there is 0 board threat next turn, and I actually get a Vespiquen on my prizes anyway, so I get quite lucky with that. But there is literally 0 threat of me getting knocked out next turn, so all I need to do is use Fairy Garden, retreat back into Xerneas, and set up Geomancy again, and then I can go for the really powerful hits. So, even though that was probably an overextension, one of the ways that I need to employ to beat this type of deck is to go super aggressive. I need to hit really strongly, really quickly, or if you will, hit hard and fast. Oh ho. Vespiquen for Sycamore is really nice here because there's no cards to discard, so there's probably going to be a decent bit of setup coming up here. However, without a Focus Sash, there's not really any ability to use Garchomp at the moment, because I kind of have that on lockdown, right? If I have one more energy, then I can just KO it without even using Xerneas. So there isn't really much that can be done with that. However, Lucario takes a little bit more effort to knock out, and I don't have the means to knock it out immediately. So this is where going back and playing defensive is going to come back into play here. There isn't really any way that Lucario can knock out a Xerneas in one hit. The 130 HP is a bit too much even for the muscle banded stuff at the moment. And, well, Trainer's Mail kind of brings up Lysander. That's interesting. So I was going to Vespiquen for Birch this turn, or probably Giovanni actually, because it's guaranteed a 5 card draw. But seeing as how I have Lysander here, I can force a bit more disruption here. Lysander up the Shaman that has no energy on it, and I can force him to attach and discard if he wants to bring Lucario back out. Or possibly like play some sort of switching card. So essentially I'm just kind of forcing the hand a little bit here, and with Fairy Transfer this will let me easily get the Geomancy off, and I can have 6 energy on board, and I still have the Vespiquen play next turn, so I can Vespiquen into Birch, or I forget if I discarded Sycamore. I don't think I did. So we'd easily just get the Birch and run with that, and it should all be hunky-dory. So this is looking pretty solid, even though that Lucario now has a strong energy. So it's going to be hitting for 100 damage here. That is a lot, but because it has the muscle band on it, it actually can't kill me, right? It can't actually do enough damage to knock out anything I have. Even Shaman here does survive because resistance is good. This is despite what, if I remember rightly, Fighting Stadium comes down this turn to replace my Fairy Garden. That's a little bit obnoxious. Not really too bad though, because I can just either get another one, or I can pay 1 energy to retreat. There's no Focus Sash on this Lucario, so if I just get 1 energy next turn to retreat Shaman, I have 6 on board. Gardevoir can take out this Lucario in 1 hit. And well, there's another Vespiquen. Doesn't really make a difference to my play here. It was always going to be Birch that I played, and all I need is 1 energy, and I take an absolutely commanding control of this game. The heads there shows me 2 energy, which is pretty good, and I actually do get the Fairy Garden as well, so I don't even need to have that attachment here, and my opponent just concedes at that. So kind of unfortunate, but I guess my opponent really didn't see much of a way of coming back on stuff there. I don't remember if I got a chance to see this guy's deck, and you can see my challenge is to knock out stuff there. I did actually have a chance to see the deck, and I don't remember seeing too many recovery cards in there, so maybe he was just running out of stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I actually have a second game to show, but given the length of that one is a bit over 20 minutes, I'm going to make a separate video of that. So hopefully you have enjoyed seeing the Mega Gardevoir deck here. I'm going to try and make a faster version of this with some of the, maybe taking some ideas from an engine I'm building with a different card that should hopefully work a fair bit. I just need to try and tweak it a fair bit, I guess. But this has been GameCow showing off Mega Gardevoir in Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, and tune in for the following video to probably in the next day when this is uploaded, and we shall show a more involved game that shows a bit more of the tricks of this deck. Till then, take care.